It's hard to imagine a beautiful Georgia summer without the setting up of the tables outdoors, the spreading out of the newspapers your dad had been collecting for weeks covering the aged wooden table, Dad and a couple of his buds drinking beers and Dad laughing around a gigantic pot. All of your friends, family, and neighbors gathered around the long table in the backyard, the afternoon sun dancing through the trees as the lid is lifted off the massive pot. The smell of Cajun spices and butter wafts through the air as the pot is overturned, and the beautiful red crawfish and golden cobs of corn spill over the table, juices flowing. Hard to imagine, isn't it? In the peaceful, serene, beautiful Georgia waters lives the greatest diversity of crawfish species in the world. Crawfish, crayfish, crawdads, freshwater lobsters, mudbugs, yavies, or any other name you wish to call it. This species is one of great importance in many cultures around the globe. But isn't it awesome that we have the most diversity right here in the southeastern United States? With 330 species in the world, it's incredible that Georgia is home to a whopping 66 of these, as identified by Dr. Horton H. Hobbs, Jr. in his Crayfishes of Georgia. This incredible variety is more than likely due to the fact that Georgia's rivers are the most diverse, temperate freshwater ecosystems in the world, as our own Professor Larry Morris articulated perfectly. Crayfish are freshwater crustaceans, which means they're awesome. Why, you might ask? Well, first off, how many of us can molt our exoskeleton? Back up. How many of us have an exoskeleton? None of us? Interesting. Well, crayfish, along with other crustaceans, have exoskeletons which they molt in order to grow. Gross? Awesome? Both. They breathe through feather-like gills and live in a variety of habitats that vary from brooks and freshwater streams to swamps and even ditches. Their food sources can vary from animals to plants, living or dead, decomposing, or dead particulate organic material. Yum. Some of their predators include fish, birds, and mammals. That's me and you, friend. Crayfish, despite looking real bad butt with their pinchers and all, are actually quite sensitive. They have a hard time surviving in polluted waters and suffer from a particular ailment, a disease called crayfish plague. The plague is caused by the North American water mold, forgive me as I know I am butchering this, Aphanomyces astaci. Many North American species of crayfish are found to be tolerant of the disease, or at least develop tolerance or immunity. But the real issue was when it was introduced to European crayfish in the late 19th century. The uses of crawfish will completely shock you. Or maybe not. Even Wikipedia had a hard time coming up with anything more than food. Crawfish in most cultures are used primarily as a food source. It is rare to have the entire crawfish served, as most dishes that feature crawfish typically serve only its tail. In American crawfish boils, the whole crawfish is served, and uniquely, some adventurous individuals choose to eat the claws. The second most common use for crawfish is bait, also known as food type number 2. Crawfish are primarily used as live bait, or more humanely some might argue, just their tail meat is. Crawfish are bait for a multitude of large fish, including trout, largemouth bass, and smallmouth bass, to name a few. Surprisingly, people keep crawfish as pets. I don't completely understand this. Lastly, crawfish are used in art, not their actual bodies, I don't believe. That would be awful. Their image is made into t-shirts, jewelry, logos, you name it, evidence of their cultural significance. I recently went out on an expedition with an expert in the field of knowledge, also known as Miss Cynthia Carter, in our class field trip. We sloshed around in a shallow stream or creek bed looking for salamanders, but ended up finding a whole bunch of crawfish. Like, a whole bunch. They're quite easy to catch once you've figured out what you're looking for. You lift up a larger rock that is not completely sunk into the ground and let the current sweep out what is lying underneath your net. And 3 times out of 10, you would catch a crawfish. Not one that you'd want to eat, like those beautiful red ones, but just a tiny 1-inch brown crawfish. I was so inspired by my findings that I decided to share the wonder of crawfish with you.
I'll probably do mine on crawfish because I keep catching crawfish.
Same.